be fair to Jeremy Hunt, he was fairly sheepish and fairly realistic about his prospects.
Now, about 3 floors above us right now, in fact, exactly 3 floors, the future Chancellor is facing the business community. We think it's the future Chancellor anyway. Both Jeremy Hunt and Rachel Reeves are in the building. We suspect the CEOs and founders will be listening especially carefully to whatever Reeves, the shadow Chancellor, says. Now, Theo Usherwood, our political correspondent, popped up there for us. Morning to you.
Good morning, yes.
It's only 9:38. Jeremy Hunt has already had a Shaps moment. What did he say?
Right, let's go through, because of course this Times Annual CEO Summit is a who's who from the world of business. We've got Emma Walmsley, the chief exec at GSK, the pharmaceuticals firm's just been speaking. We've got Sean Doyle, chairman and CEO of British Airways as well. But it was opened with an interviewer chat with Stephen Swinford, Times political editor, and of course the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, fresh from plodding the streets of Godalming and Ash in Surrey, where he's defending quite a narrow majority of just under 9,000 from the Liberal Democrats. And going by his interview with Stephen, he is prepared for the worst.
Can the Conservatives still win this election, in your view?
It's going to be very tough. I don't think any of us would pretend that is the most likely outcome. We can certainly do a lot better than the polls are suggesting, and we are working very hard to do so.
Your colleague Grant Shapps had this concern about a supermajority, this American term, that it could be a thundering victory for Labour that would lead to fundamental democratic issues about checks and balances. Is that a real risk? Do you think that could be a prospect?
I think there are two concerns that lots of voters have about an absolutely huge Labour majority. The first is that in politics it is harder than running a business. I ran my own business for 14 years, and in politics there is a lot more scrutiny from people like you, and there are a lot more trade-offs. And so if you have an unchecked majority, it is much easier to play to your instincts on things rather than to make the necessary compromises that I think are usually important for good government. And I think one of the challenges, if Labour do win, is going to be on tax and spend, because all the pressure from the Labour Party, the Labour movement, the unions is going to be to spend more. And in the end, increasing economic growth is a good medium to long-term way to create more money for public services, but it's not going to make a difference in the next year or so. And so I think that may well end up, if that happens, with higher taxes. So I think that is one of the risks. I think there is also a concern that if Labour use that majority to give the votes to 16-year-olds, they could then create a situation in which they have a much larger inbuilt majority for a much longer period of time, and I don't think that would be healthy.
Do you think you're going to win? Let's put it candidly.
I genuinely, in my seat, I think it's too close to call. I have a very middle-class electorate in Surrey, very highly educated, and actually they have been very mobile voters for all my time in Parliament. So I think it's very hard to call. I still meet a lot of people who say they haven't yet made up their minds. So I genuinely don't know the answer to that question. I've had the conversation with my kids. I may not be an MP after the election, and that's okay, that's democracy, all that sort of stuff. My daughter said to me, Daddy, she's 12, she said, Daddy, it's embarrassing that you're Chancellor of the Exchequer, but it'd be embarrassing if you're not Chancellor of the Exchequer, so I don't know which one I want.
Oh my goodness.
To be fair to Jeremy Hunt, he was fairly sheepish and fairly realistic about his prospects, and of course he is the face, isn't he, or one of the faces of moderate, prudent conservatism, and he's been speaking to some of the most sophisticated voters at today's summit. But remember, this is a party who brought us Boris Johnson. It's a party who gave us Liz Truss's disastrous mini budget, and the Chancellor insisted, though, that was not to blame for crashing the economy.
I don't think it's fair to say that there was a sustained economic scarring from that. I think if you look at us now with lower inflation than most major economies, higher growth than most major economies, we're actually doing very well. I think the real impact on the economy, and the reason for the hardship that so many people felt was because following Ukraine, interest rates went up at precisely the moment us and nearly every other economy had massively increased our debt to pay for support during COVID. So you had an extra 360 billion quid on the national debt.
This has been quite a familiar refrain from Jeremy Hunt because he was recorded, wasn't he, at some...
So why don't voters give us the credit we deserve?
more credit. Why does everyone think we're going to hell in a handcart? The problem is that it's redundant now, isn't it? Because it's too late now to try to talk up your successes. And really, you should say that the Conservatives perhaps, maybe it's an impossible job, should have done a better job of that before an election was called.
The narrative seems to have been set in aspect for what happened with Liz Truss and Boris Johnson. They've obviously, Rishi Sunak has had successes around inflation, but he hasn't delivered on promises like small boats, for example, and that's given Nigel Farage's Reform UK party the room to attack the Tories, particularly in red wall seats. But of course, Jeremy Hunt is trying to defend. Again, there's a complete squeeze, isn't there, against the Liberal Democrats, particularly in the south of England and in the home county seats like his own. And it's an impossible situation that they now find themselves in.
Yeah. Theo, thank you very much for that. That is Theo Usherwood. He's a political correspondent, and Jeremy Hunt is standing in Godalming and Ash, as you heard there. So the other candidates are, I'm going to do this with a smile on my face.
Yeah.
I'm loving this. Graham Richard Drage. I'm sorry if I don't always know how to pronounce the names. Reform UK. Paul Follows, Lib Dems. Jeremy Hunt, Conservative. Ruby Tucker, Green Party. James Walsh, Labour. Harriet Williams, Women's Equality Party. And you can find all the information on... Thank you, Ray.
I think that one's quite a clear one. I think as it gets more and more techno, it's actually harder to hear the address.
Yeah. Who can I vote for.co.uk, just in case you're wondering.
We've got-
You could spend the whole day on there.
We've got 2 weeks left. We do need some more jingles. So if you do want to record who can I vote for.co.uk in a way that will hearten, amuse and enrich our lives, then please do send it in 0333 003 235. Is the WhatsApp.
Would you like to make a request for a genre? I'm going to say reggaeton.
A reggaeton?
Yeah.
I like metal.
Okay.
A metal genre and a reggaeton. I don't even know what reggaeton is.
Oh, or maybe Afrobeats. Anything else? Kind of Guns N' Roses style?
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
hard rock to metal.
You know what kind of music we like. 90s R&B. That's for me.
A J-Lo version of this. It might cheer J-Lo up as well.
We haven't even got to that, have we?
She's had a tough year.